Welcome to session 2. The focus of this session is the learner. Before following the video, please consider these questions for a few minutes and, if possible, discuss with colleagues. What do you need to know about the students in your class and why? How can we involve the learner in the learning process? How important is motivation for the learner? And what is your experience or your views on this? For a teacher to be as efficient as possible, teachers must have a real understanding about why students are there, which can help explain general attitudes and views of the students. Some of this can be done as you get to know the student in the lessons, but to go further will require extra work from you. Why will most of your students be taking the course? What is their motivation? Presumably, most over 18s will have chosen to take the course themselves, but there still could be other influences. For example, pressure from family, feeling like they have to for work or prestige. Even when students have joined the course out of choice, with no external pressures, there may still be some factors that affect or dampen their motivation once enrolled. Attendance requirements, restrictions to phones, internet usage during class, for example, could be something that the student dislikes and acts out against. Like we have said before, it is important that you as a teacher are motivated. This will be noticed by the students and will maintain their enthusiasm. Similarly, if you plan your lessons and can communicate that there is an aim and a purpose for all tasks, students will be responsive. Remember, the students are paying to take the course and they need to see that it is worth their time and money. How can we deal with students who are struggling to be motivated in class? Or likewise, with students who are overbearing in class? I'd encourage you to follow the ethos that the classroom should be a welcoming place, free from outside pressures, expectations and tensions, where students can express themselves, albeit in another language. Language teaching is often one of the only subjects which truly allows this, as the classroom transports you to a different language with different customs and usually a different culture. Although learners' external struggles should not be completely forgotten, as much as possible they should take second place to the learning. So, how can we get to know our learners and their needs? Diagnostic testing is, of course, one that we have already discussed, and this will be the first method used by the Academy. You, of course, could create your own diagnostic test once you have met the class, so that you can confirm or double-check results that you saw. For example, in reading or grammar, that were automatically marked the first time. Diagnostic tests are an invaluable tool for promoting differentiation in the classroom. From looking at their EDA results, you can differentiate from the first class just by deciding where you want certain students to sit and partner them with. Grouping or mixing students with particular learning styles can make it easier for you to monitor in large groups and encourage scaffolding. Long-term, diagnostic tests help you manage your learners' expectations, in that their writing score only just scraped into the level 2 boundary. It may not quite have reached level 3 by the end of the course. The important thing is progress of any kind. SMART targets are another way of getting to know your students. Is everyone familiar with these? SMART targets are aims that can be given to students based on their diagnostic test results or once you have become more familiar with their abilities. You can decide on the length of time students have to achieve these. SMART targets should be specific. The target must be clear and apply to only one language point or area. They must tell the student exactly what's expected. It should answer the question, What do I need to do to improve my English? More specifically, what do I need to do to improve my reading skills, for example? Measurable. The student must know how success in this specific area is being measured. Is it by how many words they can spell? How many sentences they can write correctly? How many different examples they can give? Achievable. Attainable. The target must be realistic. It must be explained to the student how it can be achieved. Realistic. Relevant. The target must fit in with the learning and the framework of the course. Otherwise, it could cause the students to become confused, and it in itself will be a pointless task. Time-based. There must be a time frame for the student to work towards. When should they be able to do the target by? This must also be realistic and of a worthwhile period for the students. What is a learning style? A learning style is the individual's preferred method of studying or gaining new knowledge. It is something that the Imperial English courses try to consider throughout all topics and tasks. Teachers need to be aware that all learners have differing learning styles. Most students won't be aware that they have different learning styles. They won't even be aware that they take things in and remember them differently to others. But for the most part, they don't need to. As long as you are aware that all students learn in different ways, you can try and implement different approaches and techniques into lessons. There are 3 types of learning style. Audio. This learner reacts well to the spoken language and will typically remember at least 70% of what is said or discussed in a given session. Can you think of activities for stimulating auditory learners? Visual. This individual learns best when they can see things and learns through recalling and picturing what they have seen in class. Can you think of example activities for stimulating visual learners? Kinesthetic. This learner is stimulated through active tasks and doing things rather than listening or reading. What activities for stimulating kinesthetic learners can you think of? And what learning style do you think you are? So, how can you discover a student's learning style? A questionnaire is probably the quickest and most efficient way. You could make your own, depending on the course aims and objectives. At this point, please complete the learning style questionnaire we have provided for you. A good lesson should have a mixture of all these learning styles throughout the session, if not the task, to ensure that all learning styles are being covered and that the lesson is inclusive. Most importantly, knowing a student's preferred way of learning can help you include them or make exceptions for them in classroom activities. Understand better when they might be struggling and advise them on self-study methods. Imagine you're giving a lesson on giving directions. How can you use the same content and focus to adapt it for different learning styles? Pause the video and consider this or discuss it with people next to you. Here are some suggestions. Audio, listen to verbal directions. Visual, draw a map. Kinesthetic, make an obstacle course around the classroom. Another example could be that you're teaching a lesson on vocabulary for emotion adjectives and mood vocabulary. For visual learners, you could use emojis or images to elicit the vocabulary. For kinesthetic learners, you could use realia or Play-Doh to make the emotions and move them. And for audio learners, you could play music that evokes different emotions. It's not always easy to incorporate all learning styles into one task, but it's important for you to consider all the learners when you can. An individual learning plan is a document which outlines students' basic level and highlights their strengths and weaknesses. As the name suggests, it focuses on the student as an individual and addresses specific needs. It's a student-focused document for them to track and be responsible for their progress. ILPs are useful for the teacher as they encourage the student to lead. You may have an idea of what you think the student should be working on improving, but it provides an insight into how the student feels about their own work if they choose. ILP targets can be short-term and long-term, depending on the type of course. Monthly or 6-weekly reviews are a good guideline for longer courses. Having a deadline or review date is essential, as it gives the student something to work towards and puts pressure on them to prove they're improving, while also allowing them to measure their own success. The important thing to focus on and guide the student with is how they are going to work on their targets. Targets need to be quite specific. Simply saying, "I want to improve my speaking," is too broad. So something like, "I want to improve my intonation," would be better. The teacher and the student both need a measurable way of tracking the progress. You may advise the student to listen to TED Talks or English language songs to identify intonation and practice. But how will you measure and monitor this? Tutorials are individual sessions between the student and the teacher to discuss progress. They are usually a short 10 to 15-minute meeting that allow both sides to discuss the student's performances, including anything that may be affecting them, any extra work they can do because they're behind or performing well. And there's also an opportunity to refer to the ILP. This is another extracurricular area that requires the teacher to plan. Tutorials may not be possible in your academy or situation, but arranging them every 2 weeks or so will be of benefit to you and the learners. Learner journals are another way of promoting self-evaluation in students. They are essentially a diary and reflection of their work and progress and what they want to achieve. Keeping a regular learner journal provides evidence of progress and acts as a record of what the student has done on the course. You can set learner journals for homework or just encourage students to keep them independently. Providing prompt questions, you can guide the student to reflect on things you want to know, and it will provide them with a structure. A learner profile is a brief outline of who your class are. It includes basic information, names, age, nationality, etc., as well as any important information about learning styles, strengths, weaknesses, preferences, and personality. There's an example here. It's a good idea to develop a learner profile, particularly if you are not the student's only teacher. But even if you are, you may have holidays or be off sick. So a new teacher can get an idea of who the students are before they teach them. All of the factors mentioned in this session help with differentiation and link to the previous session on lesson planning and classroom management. You cannot fully prepare or plan a meaningful lesson without understanding and knowing your learners. Differentiation is proof of your knowledge and understanding.
These are the hashtag words to take from this session. Write a short summary of the session using the hashtag words and examples where possible.